Come on then, if you think you're hard enough.
Hello Rivals fans, and welcome back to the Rivals Report, the show that gets you up to speed on Rivals Esports news in a nice, bite-sized package. My name is Diatonic, and this is the Rivals Report number 36 for the week of February 16th, 2026, powered by Gamer Advantage. On this week's report, the full lineup of partner and guest teams has been revealed for the upcoming Ignite season. We'll introduce the guest teams to you and take a look at what's up for grabs in this season's Marvel Rivals Championship. And school's back in session as the Collegiate Marvel Rivals season is in full swing. We've got to look at some highlights from the Collegiate Rivals Series, as well as a peek at the collegiate rankings. Plus, the partner teams are here. NetEase have officially announced them, and many have started to reveal their rosters. We're breaking down each partner team and their players in our brand new recurring segment, Partners Assemble. And the scouting spotlight continues this week, and we've got a Vanguard special for you. We're breaking down the profiles of 4 of the best Vanguard players in the world. Last week on the Rivals Report, we covered the full slate of partner teams, orgs automatically granted entry into the 2026 Ignite circuit, and ones that will partake in revenue sharing from in-game cosmetic sales. The partner teams make up a significant portion of teams competing in Ignite this year, but it doesn't cover all of them. We've also got a slate of guest teams, which have been invited directly into Ignite as well. These guest teams won't receive in-game cosmetics or revenue sharing as far as we're aware, but being a guest bypasses the need to qualify into Ignite through the Marvel Rivals Championship. There are 2 guest teams entering the fray in the Americas region, a familiar face in Nightmare and a newcomer to the competitive Rivals scene, Swamp Gaming. Nightmare go way back to the very beginning of the Rivals esports scene, so it's no shock to see them getting back in the mix for Ignite once again. And though Swamp are new to the Rivals space, they've got prior esports experience in other titles like Fortnite, Crossfire, and Rocket League. There's a mix of old and new faces in the guest lineup for the EMEA region. The Fire Strays, Shikigami, and Team Peps are all back in action for this season of Ignite, but 2 brand new orgs join the fray in this region. Pulsar Esports is the competitive division of gaming peripheral company Pulsar, who've been competing most recently in the finals. Reason Gaming are also entering the Rivals arena, seen in the past competing in other big esports titles like Counter-Strike and League of Legends. The Pacific region has a big lineup of guest teams, 3 for Asia and 3 for Oceania as well. We've got all veteran orgs on the Asia side of the Pacific region, with Rival, XOXO01, and Zero Tenacity all getting guest slots. And it's all returning brands on the Oceania side as well, with Fury, Changa Esports, and Vulcan Red earning those guest slots. The China region didn't receive any partner teams, so the guest team announcement is the first time we're talking about China in these lineups. China has 4 guests, and they're all returners, with 1 reappearing in Rivals for the first time since last year's Stage 1. Iconics, OUG, and Fiat Lux all make their return to Chinese Rivals, while SLZZ is reappearing on the scene for the first time since the early part of the Ignite season last year. So with both guest and partner teams being announced, that leaves several slots available for teams to qualify into the Pro League via this season's Marvel Rivals Championship. In the Americas and EMEA, 3 slots remain available in each region. China has 4 slots ready for top MRC teams, and the Pacific region has by far the most available, 8 in total, with 4 for Asian teams and 4 for Oceanic teams ready to go. So that means the stakes are raised infinitely higher for this MRC, as it's the last chance for teams to claw their way into Ignite for now. But there'll be another chance for new teams to get in the mix when relegation comes around after the mid-season finals. For now though, keep your eyes on the MRC standings, as this tournament is already heating towards a fever pitch, and teams are gunning to be the last ones on the boat to Ignite. Things are heating up over in the collegiate scene as well, with a number of collegiate conferences already well into their full esports seasons. If you haven't dipped your toe into the world of collegiate rivals, it's a great time to do so. Outside of the 5 major collegiate esports titles of Overwatch, Rocket League, League of Legends, Valorant, and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, Rivals has become the 6th largest title in 3 of the biggest collegiate esports conferences. Rivals is a contender in the NECC, PCL, and ECAC, with a slight increase in competing teams from fall 2025 to spring 2026. Of course, these major conferences aren't the only places for college students to play Rivals, with the student-run Collegiate Rivals Series being one of the biggest grassroots movements. And some of these college players and matches are nothing to sneeze at. They can be just as exciting, and there are plenty of active pro players that also participate in the collegiate scene, with some college-born players on the cusp of moving up into the pros. We've got to look inside the CRS as we check out some highlights from their Week 3 broadcast. They run broadcasts every Saturday on Twitch, featuring select matches happening live at the time of the broadcast. This past weekend's broadcast featured Kennesaw State taking on Full Sail Armada, with Soren, Rezi, and Newcaster Yuji on the desk to bring the action. This feature match got underway on Hell's Heaven for some domination action, and it'd be Kennesaw doing the dominating here. They'd snag a solid point 1, and they'd go on to grab point 2 off the back of some huge Bucky plays from Night Miner, even grabbing a Penta KO and the map MVP. The Armada would take us to Spider Islands for the second map of the series, with Kennesaw looking to close it out early. Full Sail would start off on the attack, but they'd struggle against a tough Kennesaw defense, and they'd get held back short of point 1. Switching sides, Kennesaw would charge straight out of the gate, and they'd have map 2 in little over a minute. And as the collegiate scene has grown, so too has the competition across all the conferences. While we don't yet have a definitive event or tournament to decide the top team across all the different promotions, we do have a Collegiate Rivals ranking body in the form of Collegiate Rivals polls. It consists of a board that votes on where collegiate teams should be ranked regardless of which conference they play in. You see this in several other collegiate esports as well as traditional college sports. These polls are then presented on the Collegiate Rivals Polls Twitter, as well as the newly established Collegiate Rivals Network, which hosts a weekly podcast to talk all things college rivals. Of course, the teams that include pro players like Fisher and Northwood rank among the best, but there are some serious challengers not far behind. Nebraska were the CRS champions back during the fall split, hot off of several wins in the group stage there as well. Other schools like Indiana Tech, Purdue, Georgia Tech, USC, and University of Toronto rank highly as well. But we're truly only a few weeks into the spring split competition across the board, so it's still up in the air who will emerge as the powerhouses of this semester. We're continuing to help get you ready for the 2026 Ignite season, so far through our weekly Scouting Spotlight segment. But with the partner and guest teams now fully revealed, we're ready to ramp up our pre-Ignite coverage with another new recurring segment. Welcome to Partners Assembled, where we break down the histories behind new incoming partner teams, discuss any past Rivals results, and talk about their rosters. We're picking a couple of teams each week to profile, and we're starting this segment with something old and something new. Our first partner profile covers a team you're bound to be familiar with if you've spent any amount of time in the competitive Rivals or wider esports space. They've got a long history of competition across numerous titles and have been competing in Rivals since the 2025 Invitational. They haven't brought home hardware from LAN quite yet, but they were the champions of Ignite Stage 2 in the Americas region. We're kicking off Partners Assembled by profiling one of the powerhouses from the Americas region, 100 Thieves. 100 Thieves as an organization was founded back in 2017, formed from the ground up by Matthew Hogg, better known as Nadeshot. Nadeshot has a history in competitive Call of Duty prior to his founding of the Thieves, so naturally COD has been a big part of the org's identity. Their lifestyle brand is another big pillar of the company, selling all sorts of merch and offering collabs with big media brands like Pokemon, Demon Slayer, and more. They've competed and found success in numerous other esports titles like Valorant, Apex Legends, League of Legends, and recently some new titles including Counter-Strike and Rainbow Six Siege. But of course, they've got a great deal of experience in the Rivals space as well. Their initial entrance into Marvel came with the signing of the faction known as Mutants, a team that had been picking up hardware in the early competitive days. That initial roster would do battle with other America's powerhouses like Sentinels and Envy, but they'd get to attend both the mid-season finals and Grand Finals LAN tournaments. But after a top 4 finish at Grand Finals in Atlanta, the Thieves announced that the org would be stepping back from Marvel Rivals to reassess their participation in the game for the future. But that organizational pause would be short-lived, as the Thieves were confirmed to be one of the 2026 partner teams for the Pro League and would go on to announce a brand new roster shortly after. The core of the original 100 Thieves roster remains intact here, as Delena, Millennia, TTK, and Vidi were all signed to the org once more for this upcoming season. Star Duelist player Terra would part ways and go on to sign with EU org Navi, and chose not to re-sign strategist player Harvey. In their place, the Thieves signed Duelist player Self, originally from Ego Death. They also signed strategist player Winnie, a Spanish player making the jump to the Americas region after competing alongside teams like Zero Tenacity and Final Dance. iRemix and Blue Jay are also back to serve as coach and manager respectively. We've got one other partner profile to kick off this segment, and this features a new name in the Marvel Rivals scene, but an org operating under the banner of a familiar face. This org is known for owning and operating a massive name for the days of the Overwatch League, but have since expanded out to a number of other titles. They were acquired by Dark Zero at the end of last year, making them just a half step away from a team we've seen before. Introducing NRG Shock. NRG was originally founded back in 2015 by the co-owners of the Sacramento Kings NBA team. They would attract some big-name investors early on, like NBA megastar Shaquille O'Neal, and big MLB players like Alex Rodriguez and Jimmy Rollins. They'd go on to compete in a number of titles over the years like Rocket League, Valorant, Apex, and League of Legends, but their big claim to fame would be the Overwatch League. NRG were the owners of the San Francisco Shock, two-time OWL champions in 2019 and 2020. But in December of 2025, Dark Zero would step forward and acquire NRG, with one of the original founders stepping down as CEO and retaining the NRG brand as well. NRG have stated that this partnership with Marvel Rivals is the beginning of their official hero shooter division, a group they actually tried to kickstart going into the 2025 Overwatch season. NRG applied to be a partner there as well, but were surprisingly turned down, even after the legacy they built for themselves in the OWL and continued as Overwatch Esports transitioned to the OWCS. Thus, OWCS World Finals in 2024 marked the final appearance of NRG Shock in Overwatch Esports, for now. While NRG doesn't have any history competing in Marvel Rivals, their new owners Dark Zero do, having even competed at the Grand Finals LAN tournament at DreamHack Atlanta. So it shouldn't come as too great a surprise that the NRG Shock roster are retaining some of the pieces of Dark Zero. Madara, Velocity, and Fraud are all being retained for the Grand Finals Dark Zero roster. But to shore up their numbers, NRG is also bringing on the core of Dreamland, consisting of Chime, Chuckles, Stinkers, and Renko. Interestingly, this isn't Renko's first outing with NRG, as he had a brief stint with the San Francisco Shock in the OWL. And rounding out their lineup will be former Envy Vanguard player Window as well. A big shift for the Americas region to be sure, and it's quite an eyebrow raiser to see the Shock name appearing in another hero shooter. But NRG have been clear they haven't forgotten where they came from and said that this entry into Rivals is just the beginning of the hero shooter division. So a team with a legacy of success for the Overwatch League now finds themselves ready to enter Marvel Rivals Ignite, and we can't wait to see what's next for them. And finally this week, our pre-Ignite coverage continues with another entry in the Scouting Spotlight. Every week, we break down some of the profiles of the pro players you need to know heading into the 2026 season. Last week, we touched on 4 top strategist players, and this week, we jump from the back line to the front as we focus on some pro Vanguard players. We're starting off in the Americas region with this first profile, a player with both Ignite and Collegiate level experience. He shows up big in team fights with high KO participation on top of huge soak numbers on the leaderboard. He's often spotted playing heroes like Magneto and Emma Frost, and more recently Rogue on occasion. We're kicking off this week's spotlight with the main Vanguard player for FlyQuest, Vess. While Vess would begin his Rivals journey in a couple of smaller tournaments like Battle for Asgard and the ECAC Collegiate Open, he'd quickly find himself among the ranks of FlyQuest. He was brought in to replace their former main tank Gasclan after they parted ways with the rest of the team. And though they'd take a couple of decent runs at Rivals Fight Night, it would take FlyQuest and Vess some time to find their synergy. They'd go into Ignite Stage 1 with a lot of expectations on their shoulders, but were shot down early, being sent home as part of the top 8 in the stage and missing the mid-season finals. After that, FlyQuest would start quickly gaining ground over their opponents. They'd go on to take big wins in community tournaments like the Rebirth Circuit and the Vanguardian League, and would go into Ignite Stage 2 swinging. They'd come out the other end with a podium finish and an invite to the Grand Finals LAN after ending in 3rd place. This was a big moment for this FlyQuest roster, and there was a massive groundswell of support for them in Atlanta as they climbed the ladder higher and higher. They had a brutal run-in with Na'Vi in the lower bracket finals, and they'd fall just short, securing another 3rd place finish. Vess would go on to some big finishes in the collegiate scene as well, taking home the NECC Fall Split Championship and earning runner-up in the PCL Fall Split alongside his Northwood University team. And most recently, he helped take Race Car to victory lane in the Mega Monthly. Vess plays several of the classic main tanks, including Magneto, Emma Frost, and even a bit of Doctor Strange, and you might catch him on Rogue as of late too. Big KO participation is one of his MOs, racking up plenty of E-limbs while skyrocketing his block damage numbers. His awareness is next level, and he takes some big risky peaks that often pay dividends for his team. He also ends up as the linchpin for his team's engagements and subsequent team fighting, getting in the mix and applying relentless pressure. When he's on a roll, this is the type of Vanguard you do not want to cross paths with. We're sticking to the Americas for this next profile, another main Vanguard and one with a background in competitive Overwatch. Once a prolific OWL player turned coach by 2024, this player made the jump to Rivals early and has been making an impact ever since. He was once the player coach for the Sentinels Rivals squad and is now returning to Sentinels just as a player. We're covering Crimzo next. Crimzo's competitive gaming career began back in 2017 with Overwatch, and would eventually land a spot with Envy as part of their contenders team. He'd make the leap to OWL competition in 2020 when he was called up to the Dallas Fuel. He'd play for a few different teams, and even transitioned to a coaching role as the OWL was sunset and the OWCS kicked off. He'd make the switch to Rivals by the end of 2024, starting off as the coach for Nightmare, the squad that would eventually become Sentinels. He'd coach them to a Season 0 MRC runner-up and a Season 1 championship before taking up the player coach mantle. It certainly kept him busy, but Sentinels would dominate in Stage 1 of Ignite. They'd hit a few snags during the mid-season finals, complications that would send them home early and would spill into their Stage 2 performance. Try as he might, after a top 6 finish in Stage 2, Sentinels would announce that they were taking a step back from Rivals and let the roster go. From there, Crimzo would make his next move onto the roster of Lunex Gaming, clocking a top 4 finish in the Season 5 MRC, and most recently finishing 2nd in the Mega Monthly. The most recent Crimzo news is that he'd be returning to competition with the Sentinels as they'd score a spot as a partner team for the 2026 competitive season. While Crimzo's elim numbers may not be as high as others, he's usually clocking some eyebrow-raising damage blocked numbers to make up for it. He's big on Groot, but also brings some of the traditional main picks including Mag and Emma. Though it was likely a great deal of work to balance, Crimzo's ability to flex between player and coach gave him a more analytical approach to the game and speaks to just how much he understands the game at a deeper level. He's the type of Vanguard player that doesn't just stand on the front line, he defines it, blending his game sense and strategic leadership into calculated control. We're crossing the pond to the EMEA region for our next profile. This is another former Overwatch Contenders player, and one to begin his Rivals career early on. He's known for a variety of Vanguard heroes, including Venom, Magneto, Captain America, and Emma. And he stands on the front line of one of the powerhouse teams of the region. We're profiling none other than the captain of Na'Vi, Trust Me. As previously mentioned, Trust Me spent a great deal of time playing Overwatch, starting back in 2020 and finding much success as a member of Munich Esports. He'd have a couple of opportunities to compete in contenders alongside Munich, but very quickly found success when he shifted gears to Rivals. He'd join up with a faction called Team 1, who'd quickly be signed as Luminosity Gaming EU ahead of the 2025 Rivals Invitational. And as the story goes, they'd shift back to being Team 1 after Season 1 of the MRC, qualify independently for Ignite, then run the first half of the Ignite season as Rad Esports. Rad would go on a tear, defeating the then unbeatable Virtus Pro in Stage 1 and would comfortably qualify into the mid-season finals. They'd etch their names in history there by becoming the champions and would go independent once more afterwards. They'd yet again qualify for Stage 2 as an unsigned roster, they would join forces with legendary Org Navi for Stage 2. They placed third there and once again qualified for LAN. At the Grand Finals, they'd go on a legendary run, but were cut down by their old friends at Virtus Pro in the final match. They'd continue their streak of success with a win in Season 5 of the MRC, but recently struggled during the Mega Monthly, ending up in the top 6 overall. Trust Me has taken the role of captain and ran with it, taking charge in draft and team building with a great deal of impact on decision making. He's an incredibly versatile player, working with a number of heroes including Cap, Venom, Emma, Mag, and even Deadpool as of late. He's got some incredibly strong mechanics and positioning, meaning you won't catch him on the back foot too often. He's got draft intelligence and mechanical prowess with the raw Vanguard grit to back it up. He plays like a field general, leading the charge, taking the brunt of the damage for his team, and bending the fight around his presence. We've got one last Vanguard player to profile this week, and we've saved a big one for last, too. He spent 3 seasons in the Overwatch League, and even has an OWL championship to show for it. But he wasn't satisfied with just that, as he entered the rival space and helped bring his team to the top spot at the Ignite Grand Finals. We're of course covering a member of the world champion Virtus Pro squad, Nevix. Nevix's journey to competitive rivals begins all the way back in 2015, when he'd start competing in Overwatch. He'd spent a year or so climbing the ranks until he joined the Overwatch League in 2018 as a member of the San Francisco Shock. He'd play with him for 2 seasons, joining them for their first championship win in 2019 before moving on to the Toronto Defiant. But the 2020 OWL season was the last time he'd be spotted until the Dawn of Legends tournament in Rivals in 2024. He'd start off as a member of the faction known as Team Cats, who'd win the Season 0 MRC, but then would be signed to Virtus Pro, where he'd play throughout the entire 2025 season. And they would go on to dominate almost everything early on, not dropping a single competitive series until Stage 1 of Ignite. They'd end up finishing 3rd, which wasn't enough to earn a LAN invite, so they'd sit out of the mid-season finals. But they'd come back with a vengeance, winning Season 3 of the MRC, winning Ignite Stage 2, and ultimately going on to win the Grand Finals at DreamHack Atlanta. For the doubters, they had certainly redeemed themselves in the back half of the season, and Nevix had earned a world championship in his 2nd esports title. Being a multi-title world champion affords Nevix the ability to play under pressure, as crowds come with the territory. He opts for the more utility-based heroes in his pool, making picks like Groot, The Thing, and the hero that originally put him on the map in Rivals' early days, Hulk. Disruption and adaptation are his tenets, rather than raw aggression. He tries to smooth the path forward for his duelists to make their plays, and is always on the hunt for a good opportunity to disrupt enemy synergy. While not necessarily the face of the team, Nevix is the silent architect behind many of VP's victories. A mastermind that harnesses timing and game sense into his win conditions. And that's a wrap for all of our profiles, both on partner teams and the pros you need to know. We'll keep bringing you all the info you need to get ready for the 2026 pro season, so be sure to subscribe. I also break down these players and teams into even more bite-sized pieces, both on YouTube Shorts as well as my TikTok, so check those out for almost daily uploads of Rivals Esports content. Well, that's all for this week's Rivals Report. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on the latest in Marvel Rivals Esports. And be sure to follow me on other platforms including Twitch, X, and TikTok. And if your eyewear needs an upgrade, go with Gamer Advantage. Gamer Advantage provides high-quality, stylish frames equipped with blue light protective lenses to give your eyes a rest during those ranked grinds. Check them out at the link in the description and use the code Diatonic to support the channel and get yourself a discount. I've been Diatonic, you've been amazing, and I'll see you in-game.